Welcome to Phenomena Confidential, a space for thoughtful conversations about consciousness, human experience, and the mysteries of reality that many people sense but don't always know how to name. Here we explore the unseen, the unexplained, and the deeply meaningful with curiosity, depth, and an open mind. I'm your host, Simone, and this is Phenomena Confidential. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Phenomena Confidential. Today's conversation is going to be in a very certain spot that you guys are all going to love. It's between mystery and what we call reality, which is exactly where some of the most important human questions actually begin and sometimes even end. So my guest today is Amber, whose path has included profound out-of-body states that she's going to tell us all about, and a deep exploration of what those experiences can reveal about consciousness, about the body, about the spoken word, which she's going to tell us about intention, and most importantly, about the deeper intelligence that sort of runs our human life. Now, what interests me about Amber, just so that you guys know why I have her on, is not simply the extraordinary experiences that she's had, but what those experiences did for her and to her, and what they opened for her. Questions about what we are, how we relate to the body, and whether the unseen dimensions of life have more to do with our reality as we experience it than what we have been taught to believe about it or taught to believe it is. So today I want to explore all of that and unveil all that we can about consciousness, truth, embodiment, and what it means to even be human, because Amber has been to frontiers I haven't yet been, so I'm deeply interested in hearing about it, and I know you are too. So Amber, welcome to my show. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Let's begin where I think I wanted to hear the most about. Before any of the experiences happened, um, take us back to how reality looked like for you. Were you naturally open to unusual experiences, or did sort of going to that realm interrupt the conventional way that you saw reality in life?
Yeah, so absolutely. Before I realized, what and who we are and where we are, I just had a normal, regular life, but I always questioned this reality. I had these moments in my childhood that I couldn't quite explain or
Ah,
understand what was happening. I had these experiences as a child where I just didn't feel real. Like not really out of body, but I just felt like I'm not real. And, I would have these strange sensations. And, as I got a little bit older, I started having these experiences where I would be, just upon waking and I couldn't move. I would be in my body or in my bed, paralyzed. And I would see these kind of shadow beings kind of walking past and around me. And it used to really scare me because I didn't
mm,
understand what it was. And, it would seem like it would last like, anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. And suddenly I would be able to move again, and then everything was back to normal. But I even have memories back to when I was in the crib, and I could
oh,
see,
wow.
and the reason I know I was in the crib is because I remember seeing the bars coming up along the side of me. And I remember this strange sensation of being kind of condensed or crunched into something. And it was like this icky sensation that I didn't understand what that was. And I could always kind of go back to that memory of like, what was that icky sensation where I felt like I was being kind of crushed down. And now that I know what I know, I was probably coming out of my body as a baby, going back and forth to home and going back in or coming down into this 3D realm where everything is very dense. And so, probably that feeling of being condensed and kind of smushed was that feeling.
So
So,
how old were you at this time?
oh, I was in the crib, so I had to have been under 1 years old.
And then you were talking about the sleep paralysis
Yeah, that
episodes. How old were you at that time?
I was probably adolescence. I
Mm.
think I was having it even before I hit my teenage years, but I had it more and more as a teenager, and then I would have it into my 20s and 30s. I've just always naturally had sleep paralysis where I would wake up and be completely paralyzed, but it would scare me. I didn't know what was happening. I did have one sister, so there's five of us. I've got two brothers and two sisters, and one of my sisters was experiencing the same thing.
Oh,
Except
wow.
she was completely like I would float above my body. Like sometimes I would be out and I would be kind of rolling around freely. I didn't really have control of my movements. And I would notice that I would be above my bed, kind of looking down at my body in the bed, just wondering, like, what is this? And my sister was coming out of her body. Hers were a little bit more controlled. She would actually float up. Our bedrooms are on the basement level of the house, so she would float up to the top level of the house. And I remember this one experience she had where she was in my parents' bedroom and she saw my dad. He was like exercising on the treadmill, and my little brother was in diapers at the time, and he was kind of crawling around and hanging around the treadmill area while my dad was, and she was able to convey like what their conversation was and what they were doing. And
Wow.
still my dad just didn't believe that she was out of her body. But that's when I started wondering, like, I think I must be coming out too because I'm looking at my body in the bed. And
So
it wasn't until,
I'm assuming that you and your sister were talking about this, like, hey, this happened to me
yep,
last night, like
yeah,
crazy. And how did that kind of did she tell you that, well, this is actually happening to me too?
yep.
And I was in the room upstairs. And how did that make you feel? Take us back to that time.
Well, it felt like I wasn't alone. So she was the only other person that I knew of. Of course, I didn't talk about this with my friends or in school or anything like that because it was just a very weird sensation. It didn't feel like something that was a normal thing. And, because my parents didn't believe it. So that probably triggered me to believe it wasn't normal if they were telling me it was just a dream or our imagination. But yeah, we never knew what it was called. We just knew that we were paralyzed and that sometimes we floated out. And my sister had it more often than I did, and it used to really scare her a lot. Like she was really, really scared of it. I was a little bit scared of it, but not as much as her, because I always was okay. It was just a very weird sensation because you can't move any part of your physical body. And because while we're here, we're so attached to these bodies that when this body can't move and you get that sensation of not being able to move, you feel like you don't have control.
Yeah.
And then when you see shadow figures kind of moving about the room, you don't know what that is either, because you can't really see very clearly when you're kind of in that just exiting stage.
Were you scared about these figures? Were you
Yeah, because
scared
I
what they
felt like they
were?
could get me.
Yeah.
I felt like they could get me. And now that I know that our thoughts create, I know I was creating those. Because
How
as
so?
soon as I would have that sensation of,
Yeah.
of being paralyzed, my first thought was, here comes the shadow beings. And then there they
Mm.
were.
But what about the first time when you saw them? Did you say, like, wow, did these things come to get me? Why are they here? Who are they? What's their purpose? How, like, what sort of brought them on initially in the first apparition?
Yeah, I was just scared of them. I thought, like you're scared of the boogeyman as a kid. I was
Yeah.
scared like that. Like I thought because they were dark and kind of shadow figures, I
Hmm.
figured that they were bad or evil. And so it would scare me. They never got me though. But I always had that fear that they were going to get me because they were right there. And when I would think that they were getting closer, they would get closer. But before they could actually touch me, I would be awake again. So it never got, just like you don't die in your dreams, it was kind of like as soon as they were going to get me, I would be awake again. And
Oh.
now that I kind of understand how emotions affect sleep paralysis, I know when you get really excited like that, whether it's excited in a bad way or excited in a good way, you're going to pop up back in your body and the sleep paralysis is going to wear off.
Okay. I'm fascinated because the sleep paralysis portion is the only one that I don't have a clear understanding, and I experience those very often. And I remember the first time I also had, it was just one, not many, not multiple, but it was, and I felt that it was touching me. I could feel a physical sensation while I was in paralysis mode. So I was very much aware, and I could feel that something was touching my body, but I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. And I knew my mind was saying, are you imagining this? But at the same time, my mind was like, no, no, no. What I'm feeling is very real. Like I feel that there's something touching me. I know what a touch feels like. So those were probably the most fascinating phenomena for me. So thank you for what you've shed light on about the sleep paralysis, that we're obviously not alone. And I know that science explains it as your mind is awake, your consciousness is awake, but your body is still in sleep mode when it goes into that paralysis kind of mode. And we all know from a science perspective, our heart rate slows down when we sleep, and our consciousness leaves the body, goes into another realm, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah, we're
that's
leaving our
a
bodies.
frontier.
That's what all dreams are. Every night, because our body here in the 3D needs to sleep. Like
Yeah,
we go through these different sleep cycles, and REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement, is your dream state. And that's
yeah.
when your brain releases two chemicals. One is gamma, and the other one starts with a D. I can't remember the name of it, but
DMT.
not DMT. It starts with, it's like DY something or DIY something. But anyway, when you go into dream state, into REM sleep, your brain is releasing these chemicals that actually paralyze the muscles in your body so that
Hmm.
we don't act out our dreams. That's why when you have some people that sleepwalk, their brains aren't releasing that chemical and their muscles aren't getting paralyzed, and therefore they'll be up walking around during their dream time. But at the same time, when we go into REM sleep, because our heart rate, like you said, is lowered so much and our breathing is slowed down, our magnetic field around our heart has really kind of gone down, which allows the soul to disconnect from the body, right?
Oh,
So every
okay.
night, everybody's coming out, whether you're conscious of it or not. That's why dreams can be so strange. It's all different levels of consciousness. So you can go from dream state to 100% consciously out of the body, which is very, very real and
Yeah,
feels more real than here. And when I say more real, it's because you can see more details. You can see farther. Like if you're looking at like your hands, for instance, you start to see every little detail in your skin. Like you can see everything. So that's why it feels more real. Like there's more to see.
I want to go to, so just to sort of preface it for the audience, because I want to talk about how you found your way to, and I'm looking behind you and I could see that you have the great work, which is by none other than Darius J. Wright. Um, and I listened to your interview on his channel, which is mind blowing. And you were talking about how your hands, you were looking at your hands, and they were silvery blue, and you could see all the details. And so, of course, I want to first and foremost know, how did you eventually find your way to Darius, and was there a specific catalyst that led you to him? Or did your path just kind of unfold gradually and you ended up there? Because from what you're saying, you started this when you were very, very young. You probably never connected, and the veil was always thin for you, and you were always close to the veil. Because, and I believe that when we're younger, in our innocence, we are so connected to the other side where we just came from as souls before we took on the body. And as we progress through the linearity of life, the way that we understand it here, we kind of just get further and further away, and we sort of deepen into the reality we are told we are living. And so we kind of forget more and more and more of that. But from what you explained, you never kind of forgot that. If anything, you just went deeper into the experience of the other side. So, how did you eventually get to Darius, and what was the catalyst of that?
Right. So I believe nothing's an accident, first and foremost. I think we come here with a plan to begin with. And, I came across Darius on YouTube.
Hmm.
So I I can't remember what the title was, but as I'm watching the interview, and I think it was the one with it was either with Jeff Mara podcast or it was with Alex Ferrari on Next Level Soul. It was one of those two interviews was the first one I saw. And when Darius started talking about sleep paralysis and exiting the body, I was immediately like, whoa, this is what happens to me. And so I became very interested. And I think it was at the end of the interview when they gave out Darius's website. And so I went on his website just to check things out. And I decided to sign up for what we call Module 1, which
Hmm.
is training you how to control this state, how to actually induce sleep paralysis on purpose, and how to purposefully control coming out of the body. And so I signed up for that and started taking his courses. And of course, when I wanted to induce sleep paralysis, it wasn't coming on at first. It took a little while, but I think it was like 6 or 7 months later, I finally had my first controlled out of body experience where I was able to exit the body and
Wow.
leave. Yeah.
And how did that feel at this moment? Because you had already done it in your adolescence. You had already done it when you were younger, even than that, when you said you were in the crib. So how did you feel? Were you more comfortable with it, like at ease? Because it's like, yeah, I've been there, done that. It's just that now I can control how it's done rather than before it's more spontaneous.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I was able to get out and then I would quickly get sucked back into my body. And then later in the night, I had sat up out of my body and I looked down and my legs and feet looked much bigger than normal and they were like a blue color,
Mm.
right? And so I remember standing up and then my consciousness kind of faded out a little bit into more of the dream state. But then all of a sudden I became conscious again and I was flying through where there was like I was above these trees and I came upon like this house that was in the trees and I kind of flew in through the window and there was this African American family in there. It looked like a father and two boys. And I immediately knew that I knew them, that I had had a lifetime with them. And I felt so emotional and I was hugging them, thinking, finally, finally, we're together again. And when I woke up, I had like a tear coming down and I felt really emotional. And then I started thinking, like, I never knew of these people before this experience. But in that moment, I knew that I had known them for a very long time. And so I thought that was really interesting. And so I reached out to Darius to share my experience. And, knowing what I know now, I know that probably was a past lifetime, or it was people I just knew from home. And I was there visiting in the out of body state.
So you basically experienced a past life regression, if you will. I know people typically do that under hypnosis only, and somebody kind of guides them there. Would you say that that's what it was for you?
I'm thinking I was tapped into a different lifetime, or I was just going home to visit. Maybe they're my friends or family on the other side. There's no way to really know that
That's right.
until this lifetime's over. But it felt at the time like maybe that was a past life, like maybe that was my husband and my two boys. It kind of felt like family like that. But knowing what I know now about home, that would also feel like family too, because it is family.
That almost sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're way more well versed on this than me. But I believe that oftentimes when we're here, and I'm very, I remember my dreams very vividly. Most people that I talk with, they're like, I don't dream. That's what they say. I'm like, no, you dream. You just don't remember it, but you dream. Um, and I think that when we kind of go unconscious here, so we go to sleep here, we are awake in another dimension, in another parallel reality, however you want to name it. And that when we go to sleep there, we are here, and in that consciousness, we're probably dreaming of everything we're experiencing here, which is pretty the way, I mean, the way that everything is in this reality right now, which is obviously driven by the um, mass consciousness. Um, so perhaps it's whatever dimension we visit when we go, and we take our consciousness there to say, okay, this version of me is now going to get my consciousness's attention, and I'm going to experience this, and then I'm going to go back. And we only think that this is it because this consciousness is given so much attention. But certainly when we dream, that is a reality that we visit. And I know that people think that it's just a dream, but I'm like, no, you're kind of practicing death, if you will. Like when we die, we don't really die. We just, our consciousness goes elsewhere, and you're kind of practicing that daily. But that's fascinating what you said. So at what point and then of course, like now you stumbled upon Darius on YouTube, which is how I kind of came across him as well. Was there a threshold moment that made you look back at the old framework or the old way of thinking at reality or what you're experiencing just impossible to believe in and to keep as part of what you think it is?
Yeah, I'm not really sure if there was a threshold. I mean, I always questioned, the nature of reality, because those little moments of not feeling real or having the
Yeah.
sleep paralysis and coming out, I always knew that there was more than just this. And I always would think to myself, like, what is the point of this one lifetime here and now? And if in science wants us to think we're an accident, right? Like we
Yeah.
come from this explosion and we're here by accident and this is our one lifetime and we're born and it's a miracle that we're born to begin with, and that just isn't true. We're definitely not an accident. Um, but it was just validation, taking his courses and joining his workshops. It was just validation on a lot of the experiences I was having.
So knowing what you know now, especially from, of course, the experiences that you had spontaneously, and of course you did a deep dive in it because you're probably thinking this is not happening for no good reason. Obviously, there's something here, and it's very real. And then you went and you started doing the work with Darius.
Mhm.
What would you say is the reason why we have this life?
I think it's a conscious choice. I think that there's many creations on the other side,
Mm.
and I think that this place was designed because let's get this straight. Like, and this is just my feeling from the experiences I've had, right? So we come here not knowing where we came from, like we forget. So I believe that we are here with amnesia to temporarily experience something, and that something is different for everybody. Some people come here to experience, being famous and rich and loaded and having everything that they could ever want, but never actually truly being happy. Some people come here to just have your average life. People come here for many different reasons, but to make it meaningful and to learn something from it, we can't remember where we came from. Because if we truly remembered everything, we wouldn't be here. We would be jumping off a cliff or doing whatever we could to kill this body so that we could go back home where we came from. And I know that sounds horrible to say, but it's true. We have to forget. Otherwise, we're not going to stay here, especially with the way things are now.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
And
it's just
also,
validation.
I
Yeah.
think that previous experiences would probably affect how we would look at this experience, and maybe we would not be able to integrate the lessons we're supposed to have or to
So,
learn because we are so affected by all of those memories, if you will, um, that we wouldn't be able to really fully experience this to in its full spectrum, like beginning to end, and have the context that we're supposed to. Because oftentimes a lot of people don't realize that a difficult person shows up in your life to teach you patience or whatever the lesson comes to you. And if we knew that from before, would the lesson have any substance in it while we're experiencing here on earth? Probably not. Because we would already know, and it'd be like, I'm not going to go through this because I know what this is about. I'm going to skip this lesson. And we have the propensity for that. Yeah. But thank you for saying that. So I'm wondering, once you started working with Darius, but even prior, when you were an adolescent, what changed in you personally after you realized, after you saw through the eyes of these experiences? And I'm not saying just philosophically, but even emotionally, relationally, how did you relate to people once you were like, whoa, I'm actually experiencing things that other people are not? Like I have these special experiences that other people don't. So how do I connect with these people because they don't understand me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not experiencing anything that other people aren't experiencing. Just not everybody's conscious of experiencing this, but
Mm.
most everybody has dreams. And people that say they don't have dreams, you're absolutely right. They're just not remembering them because their consciousness level is probably lower than even the state that you are when you dream.
Oh,
Right? And so when you have a lucid dream, so like in the dream state, let's just say your consciousness level's like at 50% when you're dreaming. You don't have control. Things are just sort of happening. And then you get to the stage where you're lucid. This is when you realize you're dreaming and you can control your movements and fly and do different things. So let's say now your consciousness level is jumping up to like 75%. And so by taking Darius's teachings, it empowered me to understand these experiences and have control when I have these experiences. So taking his different workshops, I learned to experience time. We work in target groups. How can we prove that this is really happening? Well, we have a whiteboard and we write a number on it, and then someone else comes out of their body. They look at that board, see what the number is, and report back, and it's the number that you wrote down. So it's absolutely real. Because at first you start to question yourself, like, is this really real? Like, is this really happening? How can I know that this is real? Or these target trainings do just that. And then you know for sure there's no way I could have known what was on that whiteboard if I didn't get out of my body and see it for myself. But it's more than that, it's accessing our dormant abilities, right? He's teaching us to read energy and read fields, right? So we've done practices where we put blindfolds on and we have people hold up different colors and you feel into what that color feels like. And suddenly you're getting it right and you're getting it right again, right? And so how can you know this if your consciousness isn't tapping into something, right? So like these bodies that we have, this is temporary. Like we are an eternal soul. We don't have a soul. We're an eternal soul that's utilizing this body to experience this realm. And it's so very temporary. And there's no other way to do it besides using these bodies. But this right here is not who I really am. I don't have this hair. I don't have this skin. I don't wear these clothes. Like, I'm an eternal soul. And I have actually been out of my body to experience who I am. So I had this one experience where I got out. I was standing in my bedroom and I was 100% conscious. And this is the experience that you saw in the interview I did with Darius, where I looked down at my hands and I saw that my skin was like this light blue silver color. And I felt so much love, so much power, like I could do anything or be anything. And I've been trying to get back to this feeling ever since. It felt so wonderful. I knew I could fly. I knew I could do anything, and I felt nothing but unconditional love. And I knew that unconditional love at that point was my frequency. It was my state of being. It's who I am. And it felt so good and so beautiful. I've been really trying to get back out of my body to target that level of consciousness again. and I'll get there again soon.
Yeah, I think that everybody who's experienced, like anybody who's had like an NDE or even an OBE, I think for me it was NDE level that was just where it really makes you question. I know for me, it made me question as to whether I wanted to come back here. And it was just, it's that powerful. It's so, so unexplainable, ineffable kind of love in its richness and depth and how it envelops you and things that just cannot be explained.
And when you feel it, when you feel that kind of love, that frequency, it changes you.
It
It absolutely changes.
definitely changes you. That's why I was asking about whether your relationships with other people changed as a result because you show up differently. And a lot of people around us are not able to read the energy in the way that you're talking about, Darius, or people who are attuned to this to know that you have something extra or something different about you, but rather they just say, "Hey, you're weird." But they don't know that you're literally just tapping into things that they also have access to. You just have the ability to go there because you've um, challenged yourself to be able to tap into those things. So, because I know that probably a lot of people that you have interacted with probably would have said that, but I am curious, what was the hardest thing about carrying these experiences into the ordinary life of here, in the most dense
I think
experience?
I think probably the most difficult thing is when I felt who I was just coming back into this body, and just knowing that what my true state is, it makes it a little bit more difficult to be here. But I know that I'm here for a reason, and I'm not sad to be here. I'm not upset that I'm here. I'm here, and I want to help wake people up. I want to help people realize that they are an eternal soul that's experiencing this temporarily, and we're a lot more gifted than we think we are. We have the ability to heal ourselves. We can come out of our bodies and experience the other side. I've experienced time on multiple occasions. Um, I don't know if you want to hear about that.
Yeah, tell us, is it linear the way we think it is?
It's not. It's like everything everywhere all at once,
Yeah.
right? And so one afternoon, because I mostly go into practice in the afternoon, because I find it easier to go into sleep paralysis during the day. So
Oh,
when I'm not working on the weekends, I'll practice during the day after I've had a good night's sleep. Because every night when we go to bed, we have a sleep deficit, and our bodies need sleep. And so oftentimes we end up just drifting into sleep, and it's hard to stay conscious. It can be done, and I've done it many times, but I find it easier to stay conscious during the day. So after I've had a good night's sleep, I'll get up, take care of the animals, do some things, and then in the afternoon, I'll go down for a nap, and I'll be able to stay conscious and go into sleep paralysis, and it works 9 out of 10 times doing it during the day. But
wow.
one afternoon on a Saturday, I went into sleep paralysis. And before I exited my body, my daughter and her boyfriend, I heard them coming home. I could hear them come in through the front door. I could hear them coming up the stairs, and they have to walk past my bedroom to get into hers. And so as they were walking by, he continued into her bedroom, and then my daughter comes to my door, and she's like, "Hey, mom, I'm just going to close your door," because, she saw me sleeping on the bed and maybe wanted to give me some privacy because she was there with her boyfriend. And so she closed the door, and then I had my out of body experience where I came out, went outside for a little bit. But anyway, when I woke back up back in the body, when I was awake back in this body, my bedroom door wasn't closed and nobody was home. And so this really kind of struck me. I was like,
Wow.
what, how is nobody home? And so I've got an app on my phone where I can check my daughter's location, and she was 45 minutes away up at her boyfriend's mother's house. And I was like, what is going on? I must have experienced time, or it must have been my dimensional spaces. So dimensional spaces is like your thoughts create. And so when you come out, anything that you think of will appear in front of you. So that's what I mean by dimensional space. So anyway, I could just kind of let that go. I was like, oh, I must have been just experiencing my thoughts. And so 2 or 3 nights later, I woke up to get ready to go to work, and my bedroom door was shut. And I typically sleep with it open, right, so that my cat can come in and out at night. And so my bedroom door was shut. And so I asked my daughter, hey, did you shut my bedroom door last night? And she told me yes. And so then I started thinking about that experience I had. And I was like, was Tyler with you? Her boyfriend with you? Was your boyfriend with you? And she's like, yes. And I said, okay. And so I told her about the experience I had. And she says, oh my God, Mom, that's exactly what she's like. When I came in to shut your door, I said, hey, Mom, I'm just going to close your door. Like, same clothes,
Wow.
same everything. Exactly what I saw when I was exiting my body, still in sleep paralysis. What I saw played out 2 or 3 days later. So what I experienced was a future time event,
Yeah.
right?
That
Before
is
it
crazy.
happened.
That is
This
crazy. I mean,
is
it's not crazy. I just it's fascinating to
it
me.
is fascinating
It
because
is.
we can tap into the all. Right? So every like future events are like potentials. Nothing's guaranteed for the future. But
Yeah.
because that seemed so real, like that was so real that I was so surprised that they weren't here when I woke up. Like I was really dumbfounded because it felt so real, them coming home, her coming in and closing my door. So the more real something seems when you're out of your body for the future, the more solidified it is,
Mm.
right? And so I also experienced time in the past as well. So there was one night, this was actually at night when I went into sleep paralysis. I'd come out of my body and I found myself in this house. So I was kind of looking into a kitchen area. So on my right side was like a kitchen sink and counter, and then kind of to my left was like kind of a table with like a desk, like there might have been a computer on there. And so I was standing there wondering where I was, and all of a sudden I could sense that there was somebody behind me and walking. And so a black dog, kind of came around my left to the front of me and kind of walked forward. And then a man came from behind me and came around to my right and was going over to the kitchen sink. And I didn't recognize him at first because he had short hair, but it was Darius, but he looked much younger.
What?
Yeah, and so Darius was doing something at the sink. I don't know if he was doing dishes or washing his hands, but he had his hands in the sink. And so I went up to him and I was just like, whoa. And so I went to try to get his attention. And so I went to like kind of touch his arm, but my hand goes right through his arm and kind of through his chest area. And so I pulled my arm back. And as soon as I had the thought, like, I'm not getting his attention, like I was instantly out of that experience. And flying above trees. And so I was really kind of like, wow, Darius had short hair. And I knew he had had short hair at one time because Stefano had an experience where he saw Darius with short hair. He had this out
Okay.
of body experience and he was with Darius in the car and Darius had short hair. So I did know that there was a time he had short hair, but it took me a second to recognize him like that with the short hair. So I reached out to him for this to tell him about this experience. And I was describing the dog to him because the dog I didn't recognize. I had never seen this kind of dog before. As like the closest dog I can think of is a black lab, but this dog seemed like different, had like bigger ears and a little bit more looked more meatier, like muscular kind of. And so when I was explaining this experience to him, he says, "Well, yes, I do have a dog." And so he showed me a picture of the dog, and I was like, "Yes, that's the dog," but the dog was much younger. And
Oh,
so
wow.
we jumped on a Zoom call, and he started showing me pictures of his dog when his dog was younger. And I was like, "That is the dog that I saw." So it's an Australian Kepi dog, Kelpie or Kepi, anyway. But I had never seen that kind of dog before. And so, because I saw that in the out of body state, that was another validation that these experiences are really happening. And so, Darius was showing me pictures of him around that time with the short hair. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Oh,
yes.
wow.
And so, everything was validated. And so, this is what makes it very interesting. So, Darius said to me, now that you've experienced this past time event, he says, I can try to tap into that time and target you, targeting me. And he did. It was like a few months later. I was actually at the airport waiting to get on a plane when I got the message from him. He says, I saw you. I saw you out of body looking at me and the dog. And I
Wow.
was like, oh my gosh, that is so wild.
So
So,
basically, we can
time,
all just go and
yes.
access any moment in time, anytime with anybody. Wow.
Absolutely. So time is not linear. It's all accessible. So when I say everything everywhere all at once, that's exactly what it is. We only experience time as linear here, event after event after event. But when you're out of body, you can target any time.
That's fascinating. What
It's
makes us
wild.
experiencing linearly here?
I'm not
That
sure.
out there it's not.
I don't know.
Because this is the only way we think of time here: past, present, and future, whatever's going to happen that we supposedly don't know. Yet when we come out and our consciousness taps into the void, the unknown, whatever you want to call it, we are able to now connect to any point in time, which actually speaks to why people can go under hypnosis and go to other realms, other times when they were kids in another lifetime, when they were with somebody else in medieval times, and they were a queen or a king or whatever or not. And so clearly that speaks to the validity of the fact that that is how it is. And yet, our consciousness here in 3D is very experienced as linear, but yet we can go there. And I'm curious because you said that most of what people experience when they experience it is oftentimes in moments when it's quiet, so at night or very early in the morning, when they say the veil is the thinnest, 3, 4 a.m. This is why people meditate at that time. They have those transcendental experiences because the consciousness is in between states. The brain waves are at a certain level, and yet you talked about how you like to practice it in the afternoon. Does the time of the day make any difference, or is it just sort of like, no, you take your brain in a certain state at will and you experience the thing that you want to experience?
I think that time of day can make a difference because I do notice that I can easily get into sleep paralysis during the day, but it's not always as easy to exit. So I think that they call it the witching hour between like 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. I
Yeah.
think the magnetic field of everything, the entire earth, all of us during that sleeping state is much lower. And I think during the day, the magnetic field is a little bit stronger, which makes it a little bit more difficult to exit.
Uh,
But when you're in sleep paralysis, your heart has gotten to a certain rate and your breathing has gone down to a certain rate. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in sleep paralysis. It's like a brain wave, it's like the delta state. And so your body has to calm down to get into that state. And when you do find yourself in that state, you have to remain calm. You cannot get excited. You cannot get scared
that's right.
because you will immediately be back in your body. I can't tell you how many times when I would feel the sleep paralysis coming on and I would start to get butterflies in my stomach, like, "Ooh, here it comes! I'm gonna get out," and then it's over. Like it starts off as like a strong vibration. Like every cell in my body is vibrating. It's so intense it almost feels like it could be a seizure, right? It's just everything is vibrating so intensely, and then I get the sensation of like lead being poured over my entire body, and that's when you can start to exit. That's when you're in full sleep paralysis, when you cannot move a muscle. But it's so important to remain calm. Otherwise, the experience will be over.
And that's probably the most difficult aspect of the entire experience because
is
it's so
it's hard not
unknown.
to get excited because
Yeah.
it's wild. It's wild that we can temporarily leave this body that isn't us to go have experiences and experience who and what we really are. It's amazing. It almost feels like you're cheating on a game or something.
I think a lot of people also fear fear
Fear, yeah. Fear
instead of
is
you.
the
You
number
described
one,
like excitement, but some people actually feel fear.
and that will also abort the experience.
Mm.
You cannot have fear. So, in the out of body state, there is absolutely nothing that can touch you or harm you, right?
Thank you for
And I've
saying
put
that.
this to the test. I've been
Yeah.
out of my body in sleep paralysis, and I said, I want to see something scary. And suddenly there's this hooded shadow figure right above my face. And I'm looking
Ah,
at it, and I started laughing. I was like, okay, you can go away now. And it's gone. Like we literally control and dictate everything in the out of body state.
you are
Like
way
we
more
have.
courageous than most people because um, I was speaking to somebody very close to me, and she's very young, and she had a sleep paralysis episode, and she was terrified,
Mm,
terrified. And I was telling her, and of course, like, we intellectualize it and doctors pathologize it. And I was telling her that that's actually a very normal thing that happens to people. I try to tell her, like, it happens to me all the time too. And I realized that she's very special because she's been initiated into these experiences spontaneously to open her up to that world. And I could feel and I could sense her intuitively that she's very gifted in that way. Um, so I really want the audience to understand that a lot of these things are so normal that we don't want to make it like it's something supernatural or
right.
mysterious or mystical. It's actually just us. And when I had this conversation with another one of Darius's students, with Stefano, I was telling him the same thing. For me, this is just sort of like how you're able to run, you're able to come out of your body, just like you're able to walk, you're able to have sleep paralysis experiences, and that they are the initiation or the entryway into those kind of experiences. Because typically that's the first thing that shows up, sleep paralysis, where you're like, oh, why is this happening? But
Yeah.
incidentally, that's when your consciousness goes between worlds. So it's so much easier to understand because it's like you're right there in between. So it's easier to understand that it's not necessarily connected to anything here. But a lot of people feel that the shadows or whatnot are there to get them or to harm them. And because it's not part of the light, it's something that's going to come and get me or harm me. And that's exactly what this girl said to me. She's like, there were these two beings there. I'd like to take a quick break now to let you know that today's show is sponsored by my book, Against Medical Advice. This book is a memoir, and it tells the story of how I built my life back after suffering a stroke during my divorce. I discuss the nutritional, lifestyle, and mindset aspects that I put into practice to regain my health and rebuild my life. The book has been a labor of love, both writing it and publishing it, and I couldn't be more proud of it. Please pick up your copy from Amazon. For your very own signed copy, my email address is simone@simonegissondi.com. Oh, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd please consider leaving a review once you've read the book. And now, back to the show. And I said, they were probably your guardian angels
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
oversee that you're going through this initiation in that way. Um, so in your interview, I saw that you say, when you say the spoken word, like the spoken word can influence the body. What do you mean in the most exact sense when you say that?
So the spoken word is the will of your soul. So when
Ah,
we speak, those words are frequencies, and the intention behind the word is a frequency.
yeah.
And you can have good frequencies or bad frequencies. So I've learned to create my reality with the words that I speak. And that's how I ended up healing myself from the diabetes, is using the spoken word. But you can use it out of your body. Like when I created that scary figure, with my words and my thoughts, which is like the same thing when you're out of body. It appeared, and when I told it to go away, it disappeared. It's creating. And so when we speak, the intention behind our words will create our reality. You use the spoken word during meditations to manifest things. I just manifested myself a new job. Like it works. And it works to heal yourself.
So let me ask you. So I know that here in all of the manifestation kind of research that I've done, because I'm fascinated by these things, hence why I have this podcast. They say that in our physical 3D world, everything that we would do through thought over there, through intention, takes time to get to the physicality. Am I understanding you correct when you say that when you had that experience, because you were on the other side, it's instant?
You mean having the scary shadow
Yeah,
figure
when,
appear in front of me? Yes,
yes.
it's instant.
Okay.
It's absolutely instant. But so when I did the rice experiment, right, this was something tangible that I could show people. Gave one jar love, I gave the other jar the opposite, and you can see the difference in the two jars because my thoughts and what I was saying and thinking and speaking to that jar, to the love jar, the rice would absorb the water, and the water had this like nice ferment to it. Where the other jar, the rice wasn't absorbing the water, right? So you can speak to your cells, and your cells will naturally get
Yeah.
healthy when you speak that to them. But you can also speak sickness to your cells, and they
Yeah.
do it with music. They've changed the frequency in which music is tuned to
Yeah.
because to make us sick on purpose.
Yeah. And there's so much of that. I know that back in the day, they used to have bells in
Yes.
cathedrals, and especially in small towns, and those bells would actually, like when they would be rung, the
Yes.
frequency would kind of go out, and it would sort of cover the area, which obviously our body would absorb. So it was very healing. And they don't, obviously, those bells, if you look historically, those every bell has been removed clearly,
All of them.
intentionally. So I'm so happy. Actually, I was going to ask you about the rice experiment if you want to tell us. Um, and on that note, just based on what you just said, Amber, for example, I can't imagine if I was to take two jars, I can't imagine getting myself in a state of, let's say, whatever you want to call it, hatred, because I look at, for me, rice is nourishment. So I can't imagine getting myself in a very natural, very authentic state of hate, or whatever you want to call it, that I could just say to the rice, I hate you, I hope you die, or anything negative in that regard, that it would actually like make it go bad. So how do you get, because I could say the words, but without the frequency of the intention behind them to actually push that energy into it. So, is that distinction there? Can you do this experiment? Let's say if I was to do it and I would just say the words but not really feel them, and then because I think a lot of people probably do these kind of things and they're like, that's BS. It doesn't work. I tried it and the rice was just fine. And so, how, because when you did it, did you actually believe that, like, yeah, I want you to go bad? Explain
I
that to us.
I think that's why I never got mold in the hate jar because it is hard to get into that state. And
Yeah.
part of it I used it with music. I remember Googling, what is the most hateful heavy metal music that you can play? And I can't remember the name of the band, but it had the devil on the cover of the album, and I would play that music to it.
Oh my
And
God.
so the love jar, I would play 369 frequency music to it, and I would speak love to. It was so much easier to do it with the love jar because I am in that state.
I
But with
bet.
the other jar, I really had to rely on the music and just my spoken word. But the intention, I felt like I had the intention behind me. But because that jar never molded, it's funny you brought that up because it does make me wonder if that's why it never molded because I didn't
Yeah.
truly have that hate intention behind me. And I kept the jars separate from each other, I had a box in between them so that the jars couldn't actually like see each other. And, after 35 days, because I had these jars for over a year. So after 35 days, I erased I hate you on the hate jar, and I wrote, I love you. And then I brought them together and I started doing all of the 369 frequency music and using my love and my spoken word to both of these jars. And the hate jar never got any worse, but it didn't exactly get better. It did start to absorb a little bit of the water, but it was almost like the damage was done.
Mm,
But because we are alive, we've got, blood flowing through us, we've got cells that are alive in our body, we can reverse sickness in us. Like we absolutely can. But here's the catch. You have to 100% believe that you can do it. Because
ah,
it's my belief that we are the placebo. You've heard of the placebo
the
effect,
placebo
right?
effect, yeah.
It works for a reason. Somebody's believing in the medication that they're getting.
Yeah.
We can believe in ourselves and believe that we can do it. And if you don't have that 100% belief, I wouldn't be throwing away any medications yet because you have to get in that absolute knowing state.
Yeah. I did a reel on that, and I said that the number one most foundational thing to healing is believing, because a lot of people ask me, well, like so and so took chemo and they died, and so took chemo and they are alive, so like explain that. And I'm like, person believed that chemo was going to heal them. It's so simple. Like what you believe is going to actually manifest eventually in the physical world. So you touched on what was going to be my next question. What's the difference between just saying powerful words and actually embodying them? But it's the belief frequency that has to kind of back them up and give them the charge.
Mm.
Because
It's
I
your
think that
belief,
a lot of
isn't it?
people can say all the right things and remain unchanged, and of course then they're gonna not believe what you're saying. You're gonna say, yeah, okay, Amber, I said the words and I'm still sick. Yeah, I call BS on what you're just saying or what you're claiming. But at the end of the day, they don't realize that there's actually a multitude of factors that have to come together for it to come to be, to actually manifest in the true sense of the term. So there's got to be a lot present internally for the words to land and to actually, you know, start the motion of the manifestation.
Just the
But
point that they would be scoffing at that shows you that they don't believe it to begin with.
yes,
It,
yes,
it's an absolute knowing,
yes,
knowing that we are a soul. And if our soul is in its perfection and our soul is wearing this body, our soul can absolutely heal this body.
yeah. One of like my most foundational pieces of work in the work that I do in the health domain, and it's, I was telling this to someone the other day, it's very difficult to have these kind of conversations with everybody because again they have to be believers. But at the end of the day, and they have actually done a lot of research on this. Of course, it's not accessible to a lot of people. You have to do a lot of digging. And during COVID, when we were in lockdown, I did a lot of digging because I had time on my hands. But fundamentally, the physical body is a projection, the avatar, if you will, if you call it an avatar, a vehicle, a vessel, whatever you want to call it. It's a projection of the light body, which is not in the physical realm, but in the realm that you talk of. And the codes and the frequencies of there are what projects onto here. So if you want to heal anything, you have to go there for the healing to be affected here. But a lot of people actually approach healing here. They don't go to the root of it. They actually try to physically manipulate the body without understanding that sometimes even unconscious beliefs, which is why people don't manifest money, then people don't manifest good relationships, why people don't manifest, is because the belief is not there. And of course, when you try to do something like, I think in relationships, that both people have to have the same kind of frequency of belief that the relationship is salvageable or whatnot. So that is such an important component. And I really wanted to, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, even with the experiment of the rice, because that is important for people to understand that it's not a very superficial kind of thing. It's much deeper than that. But what role does self-knowing So us knowing ourselves, or at least thinking we know ourselves, and the inner truth that is encoded in us from the divine when we are um, created, and let's say programmed with the divine truth and the template and blueprint that we are created, what roles do those play in your view?
Can
Like
you?
what happens when a person
I'm
lives
so
in
sorry.
contradiction?
Can you hold this thought for 1 second? My daughter's on the phone and she's starting to get loud. I just want to remind her
Let her know.
of
Sure.
doing this. Yeah, give me just 2 seconds. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay, because at least I can actually let the audience know. So, um, for those of you that are listening, there's a very strong bridge toward the lived relevance um, without the actual underneath belief of it. So, do you have a an alignment between the two? So, your belief system and your behavior, because oftentimes we actually self betray and we don't go to all levels to be able to align them all for the manifestation to occur. And so now that you're back, Amber, I just want to know what's the difference between the inner truth and the self knowing? Because I know that a lot of times, and I'm speaking from my own experience here, which is why I'm asking the question, um, the body can register self betrayal. The body knows when you believe and when you don't. And the body
Absolutely.
is aware of it because it's encoded by a higher intelligence that we may not have, that we are aware of. So we keep repeating things that actually betray uh, the very essence of our being, which is we're a soul. So, in that regard, what role does self knowing and the inner truth of the divine template play in health or in anything for that matter?
You do have to have an absolute knowing. So the ultimate truth is that. And then while we're here, we start getting programmed from a very young age.
We do.
So from a very young age, we're raised in a certain way. We're
Yeah.
raised with certain beliefs, with certain religious beliefs. When it comes to religion, if you don't behave, if you tell your parents a lie, you're going to go to hell. So all of those programs, as we slowly get older, from adolescence to teenage to adults, we have this belief system. And we
Yeah.
believe that, just like seasonal colds, people at the beginning of the school year, everybody starts getting sick. Oh, my child is sick. They're bringing home sickness from school. The fact that everybody, that's like a knowing, it's like a knowing that there's those seasonal sicknesses. I think that that's why they are there to begin with, is because people believe that to be so. I haven't had a cold in almost 3 years now
Hmm.
because I decided to believe that I'm not subscribing to that anymore. I don't believe that I'm going to get a cold when it's winter time. I don't believe that when springtime comes and the ground starts thawing, that all the sicknesses get unfrozen and we start getting the sicknesses into our body. I've just known that to be ridiculous and I don't subscribe to that. Will I ever get a cold again? I don't think I will. Is it possible? I'm here in the earthly realm. Anything's possible.
True.
But I've decided that I am not that and that I am an eternal soul and I can keep my body healthy. And so that whole belief system, you have a cancer patient that is stage 4 cancer, and the doctor says, oh, geez, with this type of cancer, you probably have about 6 months to live. And then they believe that, and 6 months later, they've gone home, crossed over to the other side, and the body dies, right? And then you have some souls that are like, absolutely not. I
Yeah.
do not accept that. I am not ready to die. And then that's a miracle. It's a miracle because the
I know.
doctor said they would be gone in 6 months, and here they are. It's a miracle. The medicine is working. No, no, no. It's not the medicine. It's not a miracle.
It's
It's
your
your
belief.
belief. It's your knowing that it's not your time. You are not going to let this sickness take you out. You can look up studies with people that have split personalities. One
Yeah.
personality has diabetes, the other personality doesn't, and their blood sugars change in real time. How is that?
I
It's
actually posted a reel on Instagram about exactly what you just said, not to a T with the disease, but um, there was this one psychologist, I believe in, I forget, I think it was in Germany, but don't quote me on that. And he had this one patient woman who was blind, but she had like multiple personalities, multiple personality disorder. And in their one of their sessions, one of her personalities, who was a younger boy, younger adolescent perhaps, came out and he picked up a magazine that was in the room where he was doing this session with this woman, and he started reading from the magazine. So of course now this kind of makes you question, like, whoa, how did this personality have the ability to read when you, the patient, are actually blind?
Mm.
So what he did with this patient is he kind of took the idea of the blindness, which was very much tied to trauma. Oftentimes, that's kind of like where diseases come from. They're tied to something of that nature, and attributed it to just two of her personalities. I believe she had 11. And then the rest of the personalities had the ability to see, and just when those personalities would show up, she was blind. So, yeah, it's that powerful. It's that powerful. I think that people don't understand. So I'm so happy that that you kind of touched on that, because in the realm of health, it obviously, I want people to understand just how powerful they are to heal themselves without needing anything. And oftentimes they look to healers, which is outside of our body. So I think that those people only have the power when they have the ability to influence them to believe that same thing. But any other time other than that, it's nearly impossible. Um, and what would take for people to get to that level of belief? Do they have to practice some of the things that you're practicing? Do they have to just believe it and spontaneously, poof, you're just going to be in that state of power? Or is there sort of a progression? Because you obviously did this with the rice and what you just said right now about people with cancer. And there are many, many accounts that have been in historically. I mean, the stuff that I read when I started studying cancer, I practiced holistic cancer therapies, was astounding.
So it depends on your belief system. Again, it
Mm.
can be like a switch. It was for me. You
Wow.
know, after taking Darius's frequency workshop, that's when I decided I'm done with the diabetes. I had diabetes type 2, and I had an absolute knowing that I didn't have it anymore, and I threw my insulin in the trash, and I just started feeling better. And when I went a few months later to go get my blood drawn, my A1C was down to a 5.5, right? And so I would still go get it checked every 3 months, and it fluctuated between a 5.5. I think it got up to a 6.7. I think they say anything above a 5 point something is pre-diabetes, and
Yes. Yes.
7 is diabetes.
Yes.
But I knew that I wasn't sick anymore. I started losing weight. I immediately, not immediately, but over like maybe a year, I dropped 40 pounds,
Wow.
and I just felt better. You know, I was getting medications to help keep me awake during the day because I was so lethargic from the diabetes. I was taking medications for the diabetes, and then they're like, "Oh, because you have diabetes, you need to take a drug called a statin, and this is going to help this, and this is going to help that." No, garbage. Insulin was the first thing to go in the trash. The statin was next. And then the last one I got rid of was the modafinil, which was for night shift sleep disorder. But because I was so lethargic from the diabetes, that went in the trash, and so did the whatever it's called, metformin. That's what it was. It was the metformin for
The
the
metformin.
diabetes.
That's for
So
diabetes. Yeah.
modafinil for the awake, metformin for the diabetes. Now it's all in the trash. I'm done with it. And it's that absolute knowing that does it. Everybody has to realize that we are an eternal soul that's here experiencing something temporary. And because we're a soul, our soul can heal using the spoken word, which is our soul, our intention behind that, right? So start with deep meditation, get some affirmations, right? And meditate on those affirmations
Yeah.
and believe what you're speaking. You have to believe what you say, but start by just saying it. Because if you continue to say these affirmations, you're eventually going to believe it. I am health. I am love. I am loved, right? And I am
I
the
am
light. I am the
healed.
beginning of the end. Exactly.
Yeah,
And just say these things over and over again, right? The only limit we put on our the only limits we have are the limits we put on ourselves
so
and
true.
on ourselves, right? Like we are that. We are eternal gods, eternal beings, and we don't have to subscribe to any of the programs here.
So true. My God, that is so true. If people knew, I mean, I'm speaking, of course, from my own experience because I remember when I went through an event, a medical event they call stroke, and that's what I said. I was in the hospital, and I just said, like, nope, no, I don't. I'm not ready to do any of this sick stuff that happens that you guys keep telling me. Because of course, the medical industry tells you, much like what you said about the people who have cancer, you have 6 months, or what they were doing with me is you are at a very high risk of a second stroke and it will kill you. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And but I didn't believe it, and I took that even during the time of COVID, and I didn't get sick with what people called COVID. And I said the same thing. I'm like, there is no COVID. It's not touching me. It's just not. But I believe it, and I understand the difference between believing and not believing, because there are things that I keep saying to myself, and then when I go deep enough in my thoughts, I'm like, Simone, you don't believe that to your core. You don't believe it. You're just saying it. Like, you can't lie to me. You can't lie to yourself. And so you recognize the distinction. And it's so important that people believe it to its core. So I'm wondering, Amber, what have you changed about? Have you changed your mind about anything like over time? From because you've obviously gone from when you were very young in these kind of states, and of course up until now when you've done the rice experiment and you just talked about your illness. Have you changed your mind about anything throughout this whole continuum that you've been through these experiences?
I've changed my mind in the fact that I no longer have fear about sleep paralysis. I don't
Amazing.
have fear about things that I might see when I'm in the out of body state because I have an absolute knowing of who and what I am and that nothing can touch the soul. People and things can touch you here, but they can't touch you in the out of body state. Like we are gods on the other side, and I felt this for myself when I was standing here in my bedroom in my full soul, looking at my hands and arms. That feeling and that knowing that I had is like nothing else, and it changed me. So I know I have an absolute knowing that I'm an eternal soul and that I'm here temporarily to experience this. For whatever reason, I decided I'm here, so I might as well enjoy it.
I know you said something, so I want to ask you this question. I know you said something earlier in the beginning of our conversation when you were talking about how you were able to go back in time, not necessarily that you intended it that way, but you ended up in Darius's kitchen and you saw him and his dog. His dog was younger, he was younger. And so we could tap into any part of time, you know, whatever it may be, past, present, future, however. In that regard, following that logic, are we able to see our death? Are we able to see how we choose to end the human experience? To be able to kind of transcend our consciousness back to the other side, to be able to kind of continue our journey?
I would say, from my first hand experiences, I've never targeted that. I would say that there is no limits on what you can target and experience, but just understand that future events are potential, right? Many things can change certain paths and certain decisions that you might make in your lifetime. But I would say that you probably could tap into that, right? Like I don't think that we have limits on ourselves when we're in the out of body state. But doing that, would it really change how you live here? Maybe. I've just never thought of tapping into something like that.
Because there,
Honestly, I think that this place is going to end before I get old anyway, just from experiences other people have had.
yeah, the simulation and the way that it's kind of projected onto us, and we do so collectively because of our belief system. But once we shift that, And I think it's not even 100% of the population, but a certain percentage of the population would be able to shift it into something that could be a completely different experience for the collective if we can sort of raise our frequency and our consciousness. Um, but on that note, I know that there are two schools of thought, and this is probably something that I would like to have a conversation even with Darius about. There is the school of thought that creation is finished and that we tap into any of the potentials that have been created, and they are infinite. And we could just go and be like, I want that. And you kind of collapse everything else and you hone in on that, and that is your experience. Or then there's the school of thought where no, creation is not finished. We create on an ongoing basis, and so we can create whatever we want as we keep going forward. And so this is why I ask whether we're able to tap into, how do we end this exact experience for ourselves at an individual level? Do we just collapse all things to be able to end this experience with the biggest lesson, to be able to kind of ascend our consciousness to a level to be like, whew, okay, I'm going to skip the next few lifetimes. I don't have to reincarnate here. I can go somewhere else and continue the lessons there. Or do we just say, actually, I haven't chosen how I'm going to end this experience. When the time is right and, I've decided that this is it. I'm kind of sick and tired of it. I'm just going to choose whatever then. And I'm going to say, okay, because we have such power of belief and power of thought that we could just say, okay, I want to die by car accident. Poof. And it happens by car accident. Or I want to die in my sleep peacefully. So that's why I'm so curious, because there's these big schools of thought that kind of like oppose each other. So I wanted to know from your perspective, where do you fall on that spectrum?
I'm not sure. I think anything's possible. Um, I haven't really put too much thought into that in and of itself. I think that if enough people raise their frequencies, so more and more people are waking up,
Yeah,
right? There's
that's
more and
for
more
sure.
people. You're hearing more and more experiences of people leaving their body on purpose. I mean, if you go through
Yes,
YouTube and search controlled out of body, you're going to get endless videos of
it's true.
people in their different methods of doing it. And so I think as time goes on, more and more people are waking up to who and what we are. It could be that this place, the frequency just raises so much to a point that it becomes heaven on earth,
Hmm.
right? But while we're here in this realm, we have to be in these avatar bodies to experience it for whatever density that we're in. Our natural state is a soul.
I believe that perhaps because I know that from a biological perspective, we haven't tapped into a vast amount of our DNA, because there's only information in our DNA, which is obviously encoded there by the divine. It's divine intelligence. People refer that to as God. They go into a very religious connotation when they think of that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. And I wholeheartedly believe that we would be able to keep the human body alive if we were to tap into that dormant information, because we haven't been able to access it and decode it yet. We're, I think, at about 35%, maybe less. And we'd be able to keep the body alive for much longer. I know that right now the average life is, let's say, 80 and give or take for men and women. But I certainly believe that we could go probably way, 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 way over that. And I think that we probably have the ability to tap into what we would be calling immortal information. Like we would be able to decode something that we could just keep the avatar here and be like, yeah, I'm just going to take my consciousness over there to that realm and sit and play there for a bit and then come back here at will. Just like,
I see what you mean, but I understand your question a little bit more. Yes, the DNA, right?
yeah,
Everybody knows that we have, 12, supposed to be really 13 strands of DNA,
yeah,
and only two are considered good DNA, and the rest they call junk DNA.
junk, yeah.
And I think that the more DNA we turn on, and so what are dormant abilities? Well, there's telepathy,
Yeah.
And there's more and more coming out about telepathy. If anybody hasn't seen the telepathy tapes, I highly recommend watching that
Yes.
podcast
Mm-hmm.
because it really shows you that there is this field of all knowing where people are, these children that are autistic that are nonverbal, and they are communicating with each other on the other side at this place that they call Talk on the Hill. They're all communicating with each other. I mean,
Yeah.
just imagine two mothers, and one mother calls the other mother from a different country or different state and says, "You're gonna think I'm crazy, but I have a child that gave me your phone number," because they use these spelling boards, and my child knows your child, and they want to be able to meet in person. And then that mother is like, "Oh my gosh, hardly anybody believes me, but yes, my child is telepathic with me as well." And so these people meet from different parts of the world because they're non speaking, beautiful souls are communicating with each other on the other side through this
That's
field.
right.
And so that's accessing dormant abilities. We all used to have telepathy in our natural state, and that can be brought here again. If you've ever been thinking of somebody and then your phone rings and it's them, or they text you out of the blue when you had just been thinking of them, that's telepathy. I have experiences with telepathy all of the time. People are doing mind sight. I'm not sure if you've heard of mind sight.
I
There's
have.
actually a course you can take where
Yeah.
you start seeing through the blindfold. Are
Yeah.
we seeing with our physical eyes through the blindfold? No, we're not. We're seeing with our soul. Because here's the thing, there's people taking that class that are blind. They don't even have physical eyeballs to see with, and they're seeing, but they don't know how to describe what they see. So rather than
That's
saying
right.
a letter they see, they trace on a piece of paper, what I'm seeing, looks like this. Oh, you're seeing the letter C. They can't describe colors, but they can have a piece of paper and say, "This is the color I see," right? And touch that piece of paper. There's spoon bending courses you can take
Yes.
because nothing is actually solid here. There's space when you break it down to the smallest cells and atoms, there's space between everything.
So true.
I got a coin to stick to the wall, but as soon as I started questioning how it stuck there to begin with, it stopped sticking to the wall. As soon
That's
as
what
I
they
started
say.
putting
Yeah.
that thought into it.
Even in manifestation circles, they always say just put it out there and don't ask how. It just let the how go away and just believe it happens.
As soon as we start using the left brain, which is the logical brain, it,
Yeah.
it, it stops working because we're trying to put reason and science behind it,
That's
right? We
right.
need to be tapping into the right side of our brain, which is our artistic side and our spiritual side. And that's where the magic happens.
And even in play, we get the most creative when we play, and ideas come to you when you're not in that intellectualizing kind of state of mind. Um, so in that regard, I want to ask you, what do you think that the body is trying to communicate that everyday people miss most of the time? Like what are we too distracted to hear that the body is actually like kind of tapping us on on the shoulder to say, "Hey, listen, you could do this."
The
Because
distractions.
I know that there are sensations, for example, symptoms, emotions, much like when you were saying how you felt that like butterflies in your stomach. That's your body kind of communicating with you.
Absolutely. Pay attention to the little things, right? We're so busy in this world. In order to live in a house and afford it, you have to work 40 hours a week, right? Like they keep us so busy and distracted. They keep us distracted with the news. Turn the news off. Who cares?
Yeah,
You don't need to be tuning into that and watching it. That's the stuff that keeps the frequency lower here and keeps us more dense because all of it is fear. The news, when you watch the news, you turn it off feeling sick to your stomach, which is a low frequency, a low density. And
yeah,
that's the state that they want us in. Get out in nature, take your shoes off, put your toes in the grass, ground yourself. Just quiet the mind, right? Quiet the mind, If you're having thoughts, it's okay. Have the thoughts, notice the thoughts, right? And just think about the awareness of those thoughts. What is aware of the thoughts? And then just keep chasing it back to awareness itself because that is us. That's the soul. People, like telepathy, like I said, people are having little bits of telepathy and they don't even realize it because they're so distracted. Sometimes you get intrusive thoughts. Those aren't your thoughts. You're picking up on the field. You're picking up on somebody else's thoughts, but because you aren't thinking about it or you don't believe in it, it seems absurd, but it's true. If all of a sudden some random weird thought pops up into your head, what makes you believe that that's your thought to begin with? There's this whole field of awareness around us.
Yeah.
And that's what these telepathy kids are tapping into. And now they want to teach us telepathy.
Which,
Everything is possible.
which is one of the most fundamental, I think. I mean, intuition, telepathy, and all of these dormant abilities that obviously people look at as only special people can tap into those things when in fact we all can.
All of
Now,
us.
what would you say if someone that's listening right now feels like they're cut off from these powers or from their power as a person, as a soul, as a human being, whatever you want to call it? What is the first truth or thing you would want them to remember?
Remember to just quiet the mind.
Quiet the mind.
A lot of things are going to come to you when you quiet yourself. You sit in the stillness.
Yeah.
Close your eyes, go into a deep meditation, use binaural beat technology. There's some science behind that in how the binaural beat technology syncs up the right and left brain hemisphere,
Yeah.
right? Your brain creates this tone, right? If you put, 445 hertz in one ear and you put 432 hertz in the other ear, your brain creates 3 hertz, right? That's what they call the hemisync technology. It's syncing up the right brain left hemisphere. Use that if you need to quiet the mind and just let your thoughts be. Don't try to control the thoughts. Just keep thinking to yourself, who's having these thoughts? Everything that you want to know is within you. All of the answers are within you. They're in
Absolutely.
all of us because we're eternal souls coming here to experience this place.
My next question was going to be what feels most true to you now? And I think that what you just said probably answers that question really well, especially after everything you've lived, you've experienced, you've come to understand through the work that you've done, through the spontaneous experiences. Is there anything else you would add to that?
It depends on what you want to do. If you want to learn, if you've had sleep paralysis in your life and you're curious about leaving your body control, go into practice. Like, try to stay aware when you're going to sleep. But what I would highly recommend, if you're curious about learning these techniques, not just coming out of body, but accessing your dormant ability, I highly recommend going to Darius's website and reading his mission statement and see if it resonates with you. And I
Mission
think
statement,
most,
but even just sign up so that you can get a taste of it, and even if you afterwards you say nope, it's not for me, at least go and see so you can experience it. It becomes very real when you experience it.
yeah, at least start with the mission statement. I
Yeah.
think most people will find that there's something in there that resonates with them,
Yeah.
because there is one ultimate truth, and that's that we are eternal souls having this experience.
We
And
are.
it just seems like this place has been going on for so long. Systems are going to start falling. You can already feel it,
Yeah, you
right?
can.
Things are getting wild and crazy out there. But I stopped watching the news a while ago because it made me upset. It would stress me out. And
Yeah.
I just started tuning into myself, going into deep meditation. I enjoy just having some quiet time to myself and just being with my own thoughts and being with myself, and answers come to you. But if you're interested in waking up your dormant abilities and even learning to access the other side, go read Darius's mission statement.
Yeah. And you could find that at dariusjwright.com. And it's DARIUSJWRIGHT.com. And you'll see that on the homepage. And it is most wonderful. When I had Stefano on the show, I actually read that to the audience, and I'm happy to do it again. But I really do want them to go and just kind of navigate his website, because it is quite wonderful. And his work is just the most profound work that anybody that I've ever come across is doing, especially for us to be able to kind of tap into all that we are and all that we can do. So on that note, Amber, I'd like to do what I like to do with a lot of my guests. I would like to do a rapid fire. So just give me one word answer, or just give me an answer as you see fit. Consciousness is
You and I, it's our awareness.
awareness. Reality is
Home.
home. The unseen is
All in here. Everything is within you.
I love that. The soul is
Eternal.
eternal. The body is
Temporary.
intuition is
Awareness. It's your inner knowing.
mystery is
Questions.
death is
Not real.
best one yet. Awakening is
Realizing that there is more to this reality.
and human beings are
Temporary.
temporary. Wow, Amber, you dropped so much wisdom and so much information, and just huge thank you for sharing your experiences, your journey, the work you continue to do, the realizations you've come to, everything that that you've obviously shared with the audience is a reality that everybody can have access to in their own lives, and at least, or be able to try to get into those states to be able to see that there is no limitation that we've been taught there is. So thank you so much. If you do learn anything else, and you do have any other amazing experiences that people should be aware of, I would love to have you back on so that we could discuss those, so that we can make believers out of the audience, so that they can too get on the same path to be able to tap into their power. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here for this episode of Phenomena Confidential. And if this conversation intrigued you, expanded your thinking, or made you question the boundaries of what we think is possible, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to share it, to leave a review, or send it to someone who would appreciate this kind of conversation. And if you have any questions for any of my guests, please just send them to me so that I can get them. And then perhaps we could start a new conversation with those guests. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of Phenomena Confidential. And Amber, thank you so much for your time and everything you've shared with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
This has been Phenomena Confidential. If this conversation stirred something in you, a question, a recognition, or a deeper curiosity about the nature of reality, then perhaps it opened exactly what it was meant to. I'm the host, Simone. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with someone who's drawn to these kind of conversations, and come back for the next one.